The first time I ever got a Catasetum orchid, it was in dormancy, so yes, it did look like this, and I thought it was the ugliest little thing. I was like, how in the world is this an orchid? But yes, it's an orchid. Catasetum orchids are one of my favorite orchids, and they are not tricky, though they do have a different cycle than a Phalaenopsis or a Cattleya or a Dendrobium, and they have their own special rules to what is the right time to pot, what is the right time to water, and once you get those down, they're easy peasy. Hi, I'm Amanda Matthews, and thank you for watching this video at Orchideria, where I teach you how to cultivate orchids and craft terrariums. When is the correct time to... Oh gosh. Sorry. I'm going to cut this out. Oh. If you're used to growing Phalaenopsis orchids, the difference in this is it doesn't grow in the hot, humid rainforest in the tropical and subtropical climates of Southeast Asia. Catasetums do not grow like Phalaenopsis orchids, just attached to the bark. What they'll grow is they'll grow on a palm tree. So they grow in the plains and in the savannas. So where the palm tree goes straight and then the leaves turn out, the Catasetum is going to nestle in that between the bark and the leaf that is going out to the side. So it's going to settle in there. And in these places, it doesn't rain for a long, long time. When I lived in Brazil, where I was, it would not rain for 4 months straight. Sometimes it would get up to rain 5 months, and then we'd have to go into humidity alerts. You know, like here they have snow days where they cancel school from snow. In Brasilia, they would have humidity days because the humidity was actually lower than the Sahara Desert, believe it or not. So we would have to stay home. We would have to do all kinds of things like hang white towels in the rooms and get water pans and distribute, where they would divide which days who would use the water since it was so scarce. So this is where Catasetums live. They do not mind living in that space for that long of a time without being watered. So in Brasilia, when these would grow, they're used to not getting a drop of water. As soon as they get water, they will almost stunt their root growth. So this Catasetum orchid is going to feel the temperature change. It's also going to feel the change in humidity, and that's going to signal the orchid that rains are coming. And as soon as the rains come, they really want that root system to be already developed. That's why they start sending out new roots before the rains are coming. Now, to repot, you want to make sure there already are roots growing, but they haven't touched the potting media yet. I like to wait till I see the roots. Some people repotted a little bit before. Like as in this example, I waited a little bit too long to repot. So those roots are already starting to go down into the potting media, and I don't want that. You can already see the roots are growing out of the pseudobulb, and it's starting to go down into that potting media. You want to repot before those roots touch the old potting media. So right as you see new roots, that's the perfect time to repot, and that usually coincides with spring. And once they reach that potting media, it's going to be really hard to retrain them to like a new potting media. So that's why you have to repot and don't water. Now this is one of the hardest things to do because it really, you know, you're always used to the Phalaenopsis root, so I don't want to cut too many roots. I don't want to take this off. I want to make sure that they're healthy. Well, a Catasetum is different. A Catasetum has already used all these roots, and these roots are useless. You can cut them away. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take off this old potting media and being very careful to not break any of the new roots. The new roots should be right underneath or to the side of the pseudobulb. These roots are just yearly. They do not do anything for the orchid anymore. All this is just dead here. And it looks like this was in an even smaller plug. So let's take this off. I am going to cut these old flower spikes off now. I could have done that a long time ago because I will not be needing them. So here's the second one. And this one I have to really make sure that I preserve those roots and do not touch those roots. I'm going to actually cut this side off of first and then go around removing this old potting media. See, there are no good roots left. This is just pure sphagnum. All the roots went to the outside on this one. To make this easier, you can slit the knife right down the side and open it up a little bit. And this is not the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but it will be. And on to Catasetum number 3, which has one new pseudobulb growing here and one new pseudobulb growing here. So it's growing out both to the sides of the orchid, so I need to be careful about this repot. And there's probably roots under here, so I need to be careful with that. So let's cut. See, and when you're cutting, you're just cutting the old sphagnum away. All this is dead, 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 dead. So you can get rid of that. On some repots, like a Phalaenopsis repot, some advice is to soak the orchid so that the roots become malleable and can easily exit that pot. You do not want to do this with a catasetum. Now, it's dry like this because it's been dry for about 4 months now, and that's what catasetums like. Now, in a case like this, how do you know if it's an older root or a newer root? The newer roots are always going to have green tips on them. They are whiter than the beige color old roots. So this is a newer root right here. And this older root is beigeier, it's paper-like. It sounds like you're squishing a brown paper bag when you deal with older roots. So since there are a lot of older roots right in here mixed with the newer roots, and I don't want to risk damaging them, I'm going to leave this section of the older roots. I have my 3 orchids and it's time to pick a pot that's going to work. This was the first pseudobulb that ever grew on this orchid. This is the second one, and this is going to be the third one, which will be probably 1/3 of bigger than the older one. So when I repot, I want to visually calculate the size of this and add 1/3 to it, and that's probably what this is going to be. One thing about repotting Catasetum orchids, when you pick a pot, you're not going to pick the pot that a Phalaenopsis is like, which has lots of holes in the side and it's aerated and has holes on the bottom for good drainage. You're going to want a cup or any kind of bottle that you want to reuse. It should not drain because we're going to make the holes in this special made for the Catasetum. Sometimes it's really hard to find a pot that actually works for Catasetum, but any water bottle that you have for this size of orchid, it would fit in this pot perfectly. So sometimes these are the best to use. Now that I am done with this, I'm going to cut it around here so it will have all of this to grow down and create root. And cut it around there. Okay, that's about it. If you're having problems finding pots for your Catasetum, because next year obviously this one will not work anymore, a water bottle. It will have to be something bigger. So you can improvise anything in your home, just like this. I'm going to take this popcorn out and I'm going to cut it right about here. So now that I've cut this off, why do I want a pot that doesn't have drainage? Well, in fact, it does. You're going to count about 2 to 3 fingers from the top. And it's not a finger like your hairdresser when you go to the salon and say, you know, cut 3 fingers off my hair and they whack your hair off. Don't do that. Now I have holes all the way around the pot. What I'm going to do now is you can either use styrofoam peanuts or I'm going to use pea pebbles. So let me get those. So here's the pea pebbles inside the pot. Now I'm going to fill it with orchid bark. Some people like to use pure sphagnum moss. That is okay too. I don't, because I have a heavy hand in watering and I tend to overwater way more than I should. So I'm going to use bark. Either one is fine as long as you know your schedule and you know when to use it. So I have bark that I have pre-soaked, and it's not going to make a difference now, but it will in a couple months when you pre-soak it. So you're going to fill this almost to the top. Now I know this sounds insane to fill it that much, but yes, those roots are going to grow down and drink water from the reservoir, which there always will be water in the reservoir. So get that name tag and make sure you're not covering the water hole. Now I'm going to fertilize this. The good thing about Catasetum orchids is that you can fertilize them easy and you do not have to worry about. What you do is you can get little pebbles. There are several name brands here, and I do not want to get involved with name brands, but get one that is just a pellet and it will dissolve over time. So of course I'm not going to use this much. It's a tiny orchid, so just a squeeze, just about that much, and I'm going to put it on the side of the pot like so. On the other side, I'm going to use just a normal regular fertilizer, just a squeeze also. And I'm going to put it on the other side. Now I'm going to put my Catasetum orchid in. Put the back bulbs or the oldest bulbs to the very side. So that the front of the orchid still can grow. And to keep it here, I'm going to put sphagnum moss on top of it. I do not want this sphagnum moss dripping wet, so I'm going to squeeze the most water I want out of it. And this is just to prevent the roots from drying out until they can reach that reservoir of water. When the orchid senses that it is rising in humidity, that's when we use this damp sphagnum, because the damp sphagnum will not provide enough water to hinder the root growth, but it will be just humid around there. It will be enough humidity to signal, hey, I need to get more roots growing. Once you actually water this, the orchid will hinder the production of roots, and because the roots are already stable, they're going to soak up everything. That is also why it's important that you do not overwater at this stage. The roots are not ready, they're not adapted to being watered. They will have a hard time. You want this around the pseudobulb, but not directly on top of it. So later come by and take it away from the top of the pseudobulb. I do not want this orchid moving inside the pot. When you repot a Phalaenopsis orchid, it is really good to water it afterwards. Wait one day and then really water it. For a Catasetum orchid, you do not want to do this. You are not going to water this until that root that was here gets down to about at least 3 inches. But if you can wait till it gets to about 8 inches, then water it. The more you wait for watering a Catasetum orchid, the better that it will be. I forgot the fertilizer. Rewind. So they're going to travel down all the way to this reservoir to get water. And that's what they do in the palm trees. That's what they do in these coconut trees. You can see the roots. That's why you need a transparent pot for Catasetums. I mean, it's awfully ugly, I know, but the flowers are just beautiful. They're actually one of my favorites. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, a subscribe, a thumbs up. Just help me say something in the comments. If you disagree with something, please say that too, because this is a community and we learn from each other's comments. So please do that. And don't stop your orchid care here. If you want to watch these 2 videos, I strongly suggest that. And happy cultivating!